Hey, hey, how are you?
I am great. How are you doing?
Feeling good, feeling great, feeling fantabulous.
That's good. That's good. Love to hear
Yes,
that.
yes, yes,
Spread
yes.
that
So,
energy everywhere to even
listen,
those who are going to come in here and listen to us as we've hit our 1 year anniversary of being
one
podcasters.
1 year, and as you know, anything that you start to get to that first year takes a lot of magic.
Right. It doesn't, they say that though, but it doesn't even feel like a lot of magic was needed. I think the good thing when you are working within your purpose or working within your talents,
Mhm.
it doesn't come across as work, or even the work that we did doesn't seem like hard, or maybe you felt like it was hard. Maybe I'm not doing enough of my part, but
No, but you know what? One thing that you've always said, and this is very true for the modern educator, right? One
Mhm.
thing that you've always said was like, if I could just get to show up and teach and show up and share my story, like it just that doesn't feel like work, right?
Mhm.
And so for
Mhm.
me, it's been the total opposite because I'm so cool being in my shell. I'm so cool being in the back. Like it actually, the energy that it takes for me to show up is a lot. So
Really? I would have never, you know what? It doesn't show up that way, and that's good. Like it doesn't show up to me, it doesn't show up on camera like that at all.
wait, look, can you okay, let's go back down memory lane. Baby, episode 1, I was like, I was
Right. 'Cause I
literally
think episode one we drank some tequila, right? I'm pretty sure that
Lancer
was
and
episode
Brandon
one. That we
went
had
to
shots
go
of
get
tequila.
they went to go to the store really quick, like right before the show started.
Yep.
And we were throwing back shots. That was hilarious. That was hilarious. So anybody out there who is looking to start your own podcast, if you have to throw back 2 shots of tequila, nobody's gonna judge you. Just do it.
Right. I
Just
think
do it.
that's the biggest thing that's worked for both of us in being podcasters, in our businesses and in life, is that we really both just jump into it. Like if an opportunity makes sense, we don't have to know all the details, because I even through this, I think back to myself like, I surely didn't ask like questions. You just like want to do a podcast. I've done it before. I was like, all right, so let's do it. Because the one thing I can do is talk. But I didn't ask, like I didn't ask any questions, but I've grown it through that over the years and not having to know all the answers. Like I'm not gonna put down just random amounts of money with people who I have no idea. But if an opportunity presents itself, I've learned that I learn even for not that to grow to be big, whatever that opportunity is, I
Right.
will learn something. And I found, you don't know, what book am I reading now? The Magic of Believing is the
Okay.
book that I'm reading now. And it says that when you do things like jumping on opportunities or taking opportunities that are presented to you, you don't know what it's for at that moment. But
Mhm.
later on, when something does hit your doorstep or you become successful, you realize that it was that opportunity 5 years ago, last year, last month, 10 years ago that you needed in order to be a success in what you end up being a success in. And I found it to be so true. There's been so many doors and so many opportunities and so many people that we've helped through this podcast that I've been like, wow, what if I had said
Yeah.
no?
Right. It's only been a year.
Yes,
It's
it's
been
right.
it's been a year. And
Exactly.
speaking of opportunities, I want to get into some opportunities that have presented itself to both of us, right? That
Mm-hmm.
we probably necessarily didn't go into 2024 saying this is what we're going to be doing.
Oh no, I did
However,
not.
however, though, if you refer back to your vision boards, if you refer back to the things that you have put out into the universe that you
Yep.
wanted, when you look at the things now, even though it doesn't look like you thought it was going to look, it absolutely is
It
giving
is
what you thought it
exactly.
was going to
Yep.
give.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I think let's start there because you know, we're getting ready to get into the second quarter of the year. And again, things just for me, and I know for you, it just doesn't look like what we could have ever thought it would have looked like. Right.
Nope.
So let's
But
go back to
let me
mhm.
go ahead. What were you
Well,
saying? Go back to what?
Well, I was going to say, let's go back to the vision board event that we had in December of 2023. Now, although you ran the event, I'm just thinking, because I know you had created a vision for yourself back then, yourself, your family,
Mm-hmm.
everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does it look, how is it looking now that we're in we're near the end of the first quarter?
You know what? It feels like that feeling of like, because at the end of the year last year, I knew what I wanted. I just couldn't see it happening with what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I just didn't know what to do next. And I told myself, like, I literally spent, I wouldn't even say it was the end of last year. I spent 2023 trying so many different things, even
Right.
things
Remember, you
didn't
got
even.
a coach that got you like a new like program and things for the business that you
Yep.
were doing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, that program is doing what it needs to do for my business I've had for years. And I've learned so much through that program that I am applying now to my new business. And I'm like, that's what it was. I was so stuck on it being for what I knew at the time. And I realized that it's actually working for what I didn't know, which is now. Listen, if I could just for a moment share what is that? It's another book that everybody reads. And it's where I can't think of the name of it. It's gonna come to me later. Okay. But let me just present like how I know what I'm doing. Now, I don't know what the future's gonna bring, but how I know what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. So prior to you coming to me and saying, let's do a podcast in like January of 2023, I had never listened to podcasts. I was not. My sister,
it was so funny.
No, podcast listener.
I had to say this. Because I was like, somehow that became a question. I was like, oh, you listen to podcast, like you heard this in a podcast. So you was like, no.
I don't listen to podcasts.
You don't listen to podcasts? And at that moment in my life, that's all I did. So that's all any form of entertainment, any form, like when I look at my screen time, it's YouTube and Apple Podcasts.
Nope. No Apple Podcasts, no Spotify, no YouTube. I did not. My sister, I think the first one I had, and that would have been after we started our podcast. I went to go visit her in Arizona, and she was watching one on her big screen, but it was on YouTube, on her big screen. Never. I didn't know who was. I read books. Now, a lot of the authors have podcasts, but I didn't even think to go listen to the author's podcast. I just didn't do that.
Even when we went to, because as business owners, right? Even when we went to the podcast summit, I was like, oh, such and such, the such and such, He was like,
but let me tell you this. Let me tell you how this has led up to the opportunity that I have now. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know anything about podcasts, didn't know anything. So after we started our podcast, I was like, well, let me go watch people who have podcasts. Like, how do you ask questions? Like, if I'm gonna get into something, I'm gonna be great at it. And one of the things I've realized about me is that if I'm doing it, I believe I'm going to be great at it. And that I become great at it because I start off like, I'm not getting anything that I don't believe I'm going to be good at. And I think that's part of things. Like when I say take on opportunities, you got to at least believe that you have to believe in the opportunity. Like I'm not saying take an opportunity that you don't believe in the product, you don't believe in the people who's doing it, because you're not going to be successful in that. And your learning will even be blocked because of that. But so when I'm saying I jump on opportunities when they're presented, it's because I believe in whatever it is, right? I believe it's going to, and generally I believe it's going to help people. And there's lots of things that do help people. I just don't believe in it. So I don't do it, right? And so went to that podcast summit. I'm talking about when I didn't know none of the people who were like millionaires.
It was hilarious because I'm thinking, but you're in business. You never heard of such and such. You never heard of like, and she was like,
there was no starstruck for me because I didn't know who the stars were. Like, and that meant I would talk to people and not know who they were. So it was, or that meant that I wasn't like, if you're like, not you, but somebody be like, oh, we got to go to this training. I'm like, I'm not interested in what they got to talk about. Oh, but it's such and such. It don't matter. That's not a topic I'm in. So I'm not about to sit in here just because it's somebody. Like the topic has to mean something to me for me to go. And I felt like that was a great lens to have because a lot of times we just jump on things because somebody who it is. And I was there in a room for people not like it was funny. Now that we think back and we talk about it, it's like, yeah, I didn't know none of those people. And it was
Right.
good to also not be known in that room. So in my industry, when I go to events like that, I'm the person that like, hey, come take a picture, or hey, I've been watching your Tuesday tea, or hey, such and such, meet this. So I liked being in that room and nobody knew who I was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless somebody's like, hey, what do you do? And then I'm like, oh, I do this. And they like, oh, I know all these people who do this. I'm like, they're all
Right.
under me.
Right. Right.
Like, they're my downline or whatever. I'm their upline and they're my downline. So that led to me listening to a podcast one day. And when I was listening to a podcast,
I remember the day.
Somebody was sharing this business opportunity, or even an industry. An industry I had, so it's specifically, I'm talking around it, it's solar industry, right? Mm-hmm. And they were sharing how they started this business, and this is how it works. And I immediately got off that podcast, and because I didn't even know who this person was, right? So I wasn't like, oh, jumping on his bandwagon, because I know. I went to LinkedIn. I found out who the founders were of the company. I connected with them on LinkedIn. There's a very known speaker, the hip hop, what's his name? Eric Thomas. Sorry, Eric. I know you, but I'm horrible with names. Horrible. So Eric Thomas, like, he had come and spoken at my paparazzi accessories company. So I knew him from that. And I was like, well, why would he be connected to this? Like, I went through a rabbit hole, because I'm like, if I put my name on it, I gotta know that I know what's going on here.
So I'm gonna stop there, because I know who you are and how you are designed. You are a 5-1. A 5-1 means that one in you means that you are going to investigate. So you don't jump into, because I know you don't, it's hard for you to jump in things without investigating. And then when you commit to something, you're gonna make sure that it is like,
this is gonna be amazing. It's gonna be amazing.
No. I'm saying fast forward to right now, when you say you went to the conference for the solar event and how you were there on a panel, and now you're like, you have this certification. I'm like, good, but it's because of who you are. I'm telling you. So it's only expected. I know. I'm like, oh yeah, she gonna do her investigation as she should.
And I did, but so I wouldn't have listened to this podcast and even been introduced to this opportunity if it wasn't for a year ago you saying, hey, let's do a podcast. Not only was I listening to a podcast, but whose podcast I was listening to is because I went to the podcast summit, and he was the person who put the whole podcast summit together.
Right.
Not only did I, like, if Eric Thomas hadn't shown up to the Paparazzi Accessories convention to be our speaker, I wouldn't have been able to put in line, like, if he's on it, I know this has to be a good thing, right? Because he doesn't operate any other way. Like, all these dots are literally coming together. And because I'm a person who's read and understands that nothing happens by accident, right? That it just aligns that this is where I'm supposed to be at this time, at this moment. It's like, let's even go even further. So now I've been invited to the mayor's business address of Atlanta. I'm going to be for free sitting at his.
The first time I'm hearing of this.
Well, I just got invited last week. But how did I get invited? Because I reached out to somebody who I'd been following on Facebook, who does developments in Atlanta. And we've just been, talking back and forth. And I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I'm doing solar. I know you do housing developments. Like, this could be a match made in heaven.
The guy who has the time.
Yes.
And I'm saying, a good person to be connected to.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, hey, would you like to go? And this is what I say, opportunities. I didn't ask any. Yes, I want to go.
Right.
And so I will be there. Right. And it's just the way that things are lining up for this, not by accident. So I'm excited. And here, like you said, I do the research. It's solar panels. Mm-hmm. That is like knowing that Tesla's about to come out and you have the opportunity to be a part of Tesla's or an electrical car movement.
No, I'm gonna do you one better. I'm gonna do you one better, because this is a recent development. The people who are into the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency,
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy because when we had all that downtime during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
I started getting into, and Jeremy may have been on this wave. I need a sideline with y'all to see how y'all, no, I'm just kidding. But I remember it being such a thing, like, oh, you need to make sure you learn all this, crypto investing. And I had gotten like the crypto wallet and like starting, to try to learn to get kind of learn what I needed to be learning, right?
Right.
Um, I am sorry to say that it didn't hold my attention long enough. I guess it wasn't moving fast enough. So I quickly let
Mm-hmm.
that go by the wayside. But those of y'all who stuck with it and
Yep.
stuck
Stood
with
the
it,
test of time.
man, I heard pockets are fat right now.
Yeah.
So I said all that to say, like, you know, when things are developing, and if you can position yourself within the wave, you will come out on the other side. So as you're saying, with solar, you are in the prime freaking time now.
This
And it's
I know.
interesting because the way you guys do it, like the way that your company has developed it, is a way that anybody can get in, really.
Yeah.
Back when I was looking at it a few years ago for some property that I have, it was so expensive. It was like
Mm-hmm.
$20,000 up front.
Mm-hmm.
No
Up front,
payment
and that's the
plan.
difference. The upfront cost is gone, but anytime that you are have an opportunity to get on something that the government is behind, you're winning. And this is something that the government is actually pushing. And so that's why it just, when it makes sense, it makes sense. And so this is one of those things with the government and the way that, so even because I didn't just stop at this company, I'm like, well, how are other companies doing it? Why would this be? Because yes, I believe in solar. I believe it's the future, but these can't possibly be the only people who understand that this is the future.
Right.
So why partner with this business as opposed to another business? And because I'm a person who likes to be able to have people around me eat when I'm eating, like to be able to help other people, their model is modeled after like realtors and brokerages, right? So that's why I'm a solar broker, and I will have equivalent to realtors, I'll have consultants, solar consultants. And what I like about that is, and this is what I also know, it's not going to always be this easy of an entry point. Like if we imagine when realtors first started, they probably didn't have to pass no test. Anybody could sell somebody a house, right? And then they started like the government does.
Making those.
They put up, and what typically happens is somebody does something illegal, and then you have to put in rules like, oh, so now we need to make sure they're certified and they're knowledgeable about what they're doing, right? So I can't say that 5 years from now it's just going to be, take a 2 hours to pass a test and be certified. It's going to be way more, and the test is like, be certified by our company is like, $99 to get your certification because they're, training you for it. If this is the beginning, then imagine what it's going to look like 5, 2, 3, who knows how long it's going to be. So I'm like, this is the time to get in. It just makes sense. Makes sense from a person who has done, like you said, done their research. Like I'm not wanting to jump on something that can make sense. So that's basically, and honestly, it hasn't even been a year. Like I've learned, yeah.
So so you're going back to when you were listening to the podcast, because me knowing you and me knowing that you were not just going to jump on something just because you heard it, right? So what was it? Because I remember, like, I don't know if it was the same day, maybe it was like the day or so after when you shared it with me, and then I started looking into it too. What was it for you that said, wait a minute, let me look into this?
So at the heart of anything I do, there's going to be an education point. I like educating people about something, right? And so I remember when I started my jewelry business 12 years ago, I was the crazy jewelry lady. Nobody knew about this $5 company. And so I had to educate people. Like once I found success, which is where I'm at with the solar business, like I'm working on my success. Now I have no problem sharing with people what I'm doing, but I'm not focused on helping other people win right now. I need to be able to back up that this works. You know what I'm saying? That this is helping people. And I want to be able to say, like, I've helped, 3 people save $75,000. You know what I mean? So that's how it was with the jewelry business. Like I started that. Nobody ain't doing anything about it. And I made my extra $1,000. And back then, an extra $1,000. Hell, today an extra $1,000 helps a whole lot of people right now.
Extra
And I was
$1,000
like,
a month. So we got to
a month,
clarify.
yeah, an extra $1,000 a month was my goal when I started that business. And when I made that, I was like, how did I tell people about this? Because I was a teacher, and I was like, I know other teachers right now who could use an extra 100, let alone an extra $1,000 a month. And then, now it's growing. Everybody, mama, knows about it, right? And like my mentor says, there are certain times to get in certain things. Like, can people still win right now in the business? Absolutely. It's like Mary Kay. Are there still people getting their pink Cadillacs? Yes, there are still people getting them. But the amount of consistent work required now doesn't look the same as it did 20 years ago or 30 years ago, right? And so same with jewelry. Like, Facebook Live didn't exist. When I started, we were just carrying around a bag and doing home parties. Well, very few people are doing home parties now, right? So I like getting into things that I believe in at a point where there's so much uncertainty and people they're just not knowledgeable about it. Like, did a career day the other day at a elementary school, and I just had a shirt on, and I walked in, and when the grandmother was picking up her kid because he said he was sick, and she was like, so what do you, she's like, got solar, what's that? And I was like, it's a residential solar panel. She's like, so what do you do when it's wintertime and there's no sun? And I was like, sun is always, the sun comes up every single day. It just feels different to our human body, but the rays exist 365 days of a year. But see, I like that. I like that people have that lack of knowledge. And as an educator, I know how to take somebody's understanding of zero. And because I have an elementary education background, I can break anything down with that makes sense to her, right? Yeah. So if I was a science person or a salesperson, I wouldn't know I might even be aggravated that she don't know this. Like, what do you mean you don't know that? Right. But I'm like, this is an opportunity for me to educate her. So if she doesn't get solar at all, I at least know she walked up that school knowing more than she did than she crossed my path. That excites me.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so funny that you even mentioned that because so Miss V, shout out to Miss V with Veneta Cosmetics. She shared with me a long time ago, we have to use sunscreen every day, whether you're in Seattle and it's the cloudy and or what, because like you said, the sun, just because we don't see the sun doesn't mean it's not there, and doesn't mean that energy is just waves. It's just a frequency of light and wavelengths. Just doesn't mean that our natural eyes can't see it, but everything else is absorbing it. That would just, I mean, I understand we think like when in the winter, when the sun is not at its like most highest or shiniest or whatever, and we see that the leaves turn and they fall and all that type of thing, but the tree don't die.
Right. It's still receiving sunlight. Right. Exactly. That thought process. But it's funny because I was listening to another podcast, because I'm a podcast now, baby. And he said, humans are probably the only thing that God created that has a decision to not do what it was created to do. Meaning the sun that God created doesn't get to say, I'm not going to shine today. It literally shows up to do what God created to do every single day. The moon doesn't say, I'm taking today off, I'm not going to do that. No, the moon literally shows up to do what God created to do every single day. We're the only people we're the only thing that God created that was created for a purpose. And yet we decide, I'm not going to show up in that purpose today. This week, I'm taking a year off from my purpose.
We got to stop right here. I've got to let that sink in. That is crazy. So say it one more time. Humans, what?
We're the only ones that God created for a purpose, and we actually have can make the decision to not walk in that purpose. Like the grass doesn't say, I'm walking out this lawn, I'm not going to be grass today.
I don't know if y'all, I don't
know. You ever see an ant that's not doing its ant thing? they walk in the purpose God created them for.
But do you understand how powerful that is?
I saved that episode and I watched it 3 times since.
So I really would love to see what this world would really look like if each and every human operated in what its purpose. God-given purpose was. That is crazy.
But what, at least for myself, when I've noticed that I'm this, like right now in this solar, like I said, I don't know what tomorrow brings, but currently I feel like this is my purpose, is to educate, because it just feels so good. I'm ignited by it. Like,
Well, not only
doors
that,
are
so
opening up for me that I don't have to try to open.
your whole path has been education.
Yeah.
Now, you could have been so fixed in your mind and said, my path is education. That means that I'm going to be here with these kids in this elementary school or middle school or high school.
It
And I'm
wasn't
going,
fulfilling anymore though.
right.
And
But I'm saying,
I knew that I wasn't. We were doing a recording with Lashana and Kayron.
mm-hmm,
And Kayron kept saying, I just knew that there was more.
mm-hmm,
Like I felt like I was supposed to be touching and doing more, and the schoolhouse just wasn't fulfilling that. I knew I needed to be teaching and educating, you know what I mean? But I just felt like this isn't, I'm supposed to be touching and educating more people. How do I do that?
right. And again, going back to the fact that you're a 5-1, your message is universal. Your message is for the masses, okay? And that means that you came here for other people. And when you really dig deep into that, you're living out your purpose. You're living out your design. Like, and
And
you
it feels
somehow
so good.
and innately had this feeling in you that, and thank God you're not a person that will shrink to what somebody else says, because I'm sure people would have been like, why are you leaving your good
I
high
used
pants
to.
job?
I used to. I mean, even now, there's people who are probably like, there are people now who are probably like, what is she doing? She's already in a position to, do this or do that, or, she's already, and I'm supposed to be bigger. I'm
No,
supposed to be educating more people.
and I didn't know
And
what it was.
the product is just a means to get to more people. Like, it's not the product that I'm stuck on. It's the ability to educate and open people's minds to more. I know I'm about to help a lot more people through this avenue to believe more, believe in their own abilities, like the magic of believing. Like, people lose or don't. I was people. That's how I know this is true. Don't go to their next level because they still have to work on themselves.